ac fe fwrwn ni ati nawr i roi croeso arbennig i'n gwestai sydd wedi rhoi o'i hamser. Felly ni'n ddiolchgar iawn bod Liz Saville Roberts wedi ymuno gyda ni, a wedyn Beth Winter. Cyflwyniad cloi o'r ddwy, ar bod chi'n nabod nhw, fi'n siŵr. Liz Saville Roberts, aelod seneddol am y tro gyntaf yn 2015, gan ddod fenyw gyntaf i gynrychioli Dwyfor Meirionnydd ac aelod seneddol benywaidd cyntaf Plaid Cymru. Cadwodd y set yn 2017 a 2019 gan gyfran sylweddol yn uwch o'r bleidlais dros hynny, felly llongyfarchiadau. Yn wreiddiol o Lundain, dysgodd Liz y Gymraeg tra yn y Brifysgol yn Aberystwyth, cyn bu'n gweithio fel newyddiadurwraig yn Llundain a Gogledd Cymru, ac yna darlithydd Coleg Meirion Dwyfor, lle bu'n arwain ar addysg Gymraeg. Cyn ei hethol i'r Senedd, roedd Liz yn gynghorydd sir Gwynedd rhwng 2004 a 2015 yn cynrychioli Morfa Nefyn a Penllyn. Yn 2017, penodwyd Liz yn arweinydd grŵp Plaid Cymru San Steffan, ac ar hyn o bryd hi yw llefarydd y blaid ar ynys a zero net yn ogystal â materion cartref, busnes, masnach, trafnidiaeth, menywod a chydraddoldeb a cyfiawnder yn y Senedd. Croeso i Liz. Wedyn hefyd croeso mawr i Beth Winter, wedi bod yn aelod seneddol llafur dros Cwm Cynnon ers 2019. Cafodd ei geni a'i magu yn Aberdâr, ac mae'n dal i fyw yng Nghwm Cynnon. Cyn mynd i'r Senedd, bu'n gweithio undeb Prifysgolion Colegau Cymru, ac ar ôl gweithio'n blaenorol academydd ym Mhrifysgol Abertawe, mae wedi bod hefyd yn gweithio i Shelter Cymru ac yn weithgwraig yn y gymuned. Beth yw'r unig aelod Cymreig o'r grŵp ymgyrchu sosialaidd, ac ers cael ei hethol, mae wedi canolbwyntio ar egwyddorion adeiladu cyfoeth cymunedol a sut y gellir ei chymwyso i'r economi leol yn Cwm Cynnon a Thu Hwnt. Felly croeso cynnes i chi'ch ddwy am eich parodrwydd i siarad yn y man, ond cryn hynny, mae gyda ni 3 fideo cyflym.
The Crown Estate manages land, other property and assets rights across the UK. Rights are auctioned in the form of licenses. Currently, the most lucrative of these rights are for offshore wind farms, where the Crown Estate owns the rights to the seabed. Between 2020 and 2021, the Crown Estate in Wales saw the value of its holdings increase from £49.2 million to £549.1 million and is currently valued at £603 million. And this is likely to increase further over the coming years, with one estimate placing the gross asset value in excess of £900 million. Meanwhile, income and profits from the Crown Estate generate huge sums, money which leaves Wales. These profits are divided between the King and the UK Treasury. The Crown Estate and the corporations that own renewable installations extricate all of the profits which are generated from the natural resources of Wales. And yet, at the same time, Wales has a crisis of poverty and a lack of adequate funding. A third of all children growing up in Wales are growing up in poverty, the highest in the UK. Devolving the Crown Estate would allow Wales to address this poverty by creating a sovereign wealth fund for public benefit, a positive step in the right direction as we look to end decades of deprivation, underfunding, and a failure to address fundamental issues of social justice and lack of agency. Wales must be allowed to prosper and thrive.
It's time to devolve the Crown Estate in Wales. It's time for the people of Cymru to benefit from our natural resources. It's time for the profits from Welsh renewable energy to remain here in Wales, to address poverty in communities across Cymru, to help build a sustainable and fairer country. In Scotland, the Crown Estate has been returned to the people. The people of Wales are simply asking for that to happen here, to empower communities, to build agency and resilience. The time is now. The people and the politicians alike are calling for this change. So please do join us in our campaign to devolve the Crown Estate rights to Wales, because it's the right thing to do.
I'm supporting the devolution of the Crown Estate to Wales. It's happened in Scotland, but not here in our country, and it really does matter because the Crown Estate is a big property portfolio. It's land, it's foreshore, it's riverbed, and it produces a substantial income. We need that income to invest here in Wales in our public services, in health, in education, in tackling poverty. It has cross-party support from the Labour Party here in Wales, from Plaid Cymru and from the Liberal Democrats. It really matters. We need that income for our public services, and I hope this campaign succeeds.
Diolch o galon i'r tri unigolyn hynny am ddatgan eu cefnogaeth tuag at yr ymgyrch yma, bwysig yma. Felly nawr byddwn ni'n cael mwy o wybodaeth am yr hyn sydd yn medru digwydd a'r hyn sydd wedi digwydd hyd yn hyn o ran y datganoli, y Stad y Goron. Felly gofynnaf nawr yn gyntaf i Liz Saville Roberts i ddweud beth yw'r hyn sydd wedi bod yn digwydd yn y Senedd hyd yn hyn.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr iawn, Chris, a diolch yn fawr iawn i Siarter Cymru am drefnu hyn, am drefnu'r fideos, ac i wadd Beth a Finna yma i siarad heddiw. Mae o mor braf os di hyn yn gallu bod cyn gymaint o phosib yn rhywbeth trawsbleidiol, achos dwi yn meddwl mae'n job ni rwan ydi creu momentum i hyn, achos yr hyn wy'n cael bob tro pan fyddai yn holi am ddatganoli y Stad y Goron i weinidogion Swyddfa Cymru, ydy bod does neb yn gofyn am hyn ar stepan y drws. Mae yna elfen o'n cadw ni bron yn blentynnaidd, yn infantileisio ni yng Nghymru, bod y modd i ni wneud gwahaniaeth i ni yn hunan yn cael ei amddifadu i ni, a modd hyd yn oed i ni ofyn am wella'n sefyllfa ni'n cael ei gwadu i ni. Felly yr hyn dwi'n gobeithio bydd yn digwydd o hwn ydy nid just i rai ohono ni sy'n mwynhau materion cyfansoddiadol a syniadau haniaethol am be dyn ni'n gallu gwneud yn wahanol, ond dyn ni dechrau cael y syniadau o mi allwn ni wneud hwn neu llall os oes gennym ni yr arian yma. A dwi'n meddwl byddwn ni yn llwyddo i fachu dychymyg bobl a diddordeb bobl trwy troi hynny o fod yn syniad i fod yn rhywbeth mae bobl yn gallu gafal yno fo. Right, I'll just go through what happened here so far with the parliamentary resources that we've used. And what I did 2.5 years ago was introduce a Crown Estate devolution to Wales private members bill. And we kept that going in the way that you can. I had the opportunity to speak to it as a 10-minute rule bill. And then we kept it going until the King's speech this year. And of course, with the King's speech, all the bills that were in process then ceased to operate. And we're now looking for another slot so that we have the means of using this as a technique to draw attention to the issue. Now, what this would have done, and what we will bring forward again, would be to devolve the management of the Crown Estate and its assets in Wales to the Welsh Government, which of course is exactly what happened in Scotland with the 2016 Scotland Act. It was supported, it had cross-party support then from Beth and members of the SNP, Caroline Lucas of the Green Party, and also John McDonnell and Geraint Davies of Labour as well. But the hard reality of this was that there was no parliamentary time for it. So although we could draw attention to this, use Westminster, if you like, as a sounding board for ideas, we couldn't bring it forward as legislation. So we need to keep on making the noise about it, because I mean, the grim reality is that for us to devolve this to Wales, it has to happen in Westminster, just the nature of how the UK operates as things stand. I'm very proud to say that with the cooperation agreement between Plaid Cymru and Welsh Government. There is a formal declaration of support to devolving the Crown Estate from Welsh Government, and I was delighted to hear John Griffiths. I know he's a former Minister for Further Education, post-16 education, and I think the skills potential here is immense. It is also, of course, one of the recommendations on the Constitutional Commission. Again, that this should be among the next powers, that if we're looking at that gradual devolution of powers, this should be there early on. It is disappointing, of course, that Gordon Brown's Constitutional Commission made no mention of this. And I think this is something that we need to keep the pressure on for this inconsistency between Welsh government and what Labour is saying in the UK, with some very honourable exceptions. I more than recognise that. We touched, Michael Treen gave a really good sort of brief introduction. I think just to say, we all know that much of this, the immense increase in the value of the assets and the anticipated increase in the revenue is down to the marine holdings. And of course, the Crown Estate has something like 65% of Welsh foreshore and the riverbed, including the port of Milford Haven. And it's been found the asset value of what they hold in Wales is around about 853 million. It's really difficult, and my respect to Arfon Jones, who I think may be watching this evening, of Cymru Republic, who put down an FOI to get these details. It's much more difficult to get the revenue income. Now that I think we should be fighting to get, because the assets is one thing, but actually the amount of money that is being generated in Wales, that's what we need to find out. And it's been refused on a Freedom of Information request previously. What we do know, and I won't repeat it because Michael Sheen said it very well, that this has increased from 49 million possibly up to 900 million as we're looking into the potential of mainly offshore wind. Just to touch on where this money goes, presently 25% of it goes into the Royal Finances, the sovereign grant. That is due to go down to 12% in the next financial year, I think 24-25. But what's really interesting, and that was a piece of, we know the royal finances are, as they say, shrouded in fog, but I think that was a piece of sharp PR on the part of the Crown, because it looks like that they're reducing how much they're receiving, but actually, it looks to me that even with 12% down from 25%, they're going to get £40 million extra in the next year or so. That gives you an idea of how much the value of these are increasing. Just to finally to touch on this, of course, the things that we should be confident of is that YouGov polled on this, and 58% of people in Wales support devolving the Crown Estate. I think we would easily raise that only if people were actually to realise what it means, that it's not devolution for the sake of it, that the money that could bring in. Now, I said at the very beginning what we need to do desperately, and I think getting so many people here today this is the opportunity to start getting different minds working on this, but we need to find a way of engaging with people as to what we could do with this, to start populating the imagination, if you like, of the future, of making this an attractive thing. And just to touch on what Scotland have done with the ScotWind leasing, we know that there have been 20 projects have been approved, that there'll be 28.8 billion investment in Scotland because of this. We also know that there's been money returned to Scottish Government to the tune of 700 million. So you get that sense of what the revenue has been there. We need somehow or other to extrapolate this into Wales and also to learn what they're doing in Scotland. I was just looking back for 22-23, and we're all hearing about how our local councils are suffering in their funding. But 26 councils in Wales had £11 million distributed to them from these sorts of projects. The Scottish Government gave that back out again. So you're beginning to start to see a certain pattern of how this is developing. The other really exciting potential, I think, here, alongside the money that could be generated, is what would be the contractual clauses we would put in as regards procurement. So could we put in local workforce, an expectation, say, that energy will be produced that is cheaper for local communities. You know, I mean, the areas I represent, North Wales and Merseyside, pay the highest standing charges in the UK for electricity, with poor old housing that is quite difficult to improve. So there's so much we could be doing with this. Right, just to close really on what has been said to us as why this can't happen. And this, to me, actually is one of those, you know, when you're facing the Tories and facing people like Simon Hart when he was Secretary of State for Wales, they haven't really got an argument here. They know that they're centralising something, which if they were going off on one with rhetoric, they would say that they want to empower communities and that Wales should stand on our own 2 feet. So what Simon Hart has said to me in the past is that fragmenting the market and would create a delay for the development of further key projects. Well, hey, you know, there will be a delay, but we start doing so much more with this. And that old question there, that thing, oh, the brush off, nobody ever asks for this on the doorstep. Well, that is our job. That is our job. Everybody who is here now, we need to say, you know, what we could do with this, how this would make our lives better. Looking at the I think, Chris, you touched on Cwmarian with the money that's being generated there. Up in the north, you've got Ynawr and Ionawr. Again, we could start looking at actually cheaper production of energy, which is something we have never had out of the energy projects in Wales so far. That really is something that we would be serving our nation particularly well if we could start to bring that on. The other thing, of course, to say about what the UK government has done so far is that the first offshore wind farm auction failed in September 2023. Didn't get a single applications that came through, because they hadn't accounted in the project leases for high inflation and the supply costs that came through. Although ironically, the Irish government, who are developing in partnership for the same area, if you like, they were successful on their part. So we could be much more flexible and much more responsive in making sure that the main mark of success would be actually getting projects off the ground or off the seabed, or the surface of the sea, and actually working. And Westminster has failed on that front for us as well. So, and I think the opportunity now this evening, any ideas that we can have from people as to the way forward, and to make this a popular campaign, to take it out of the you know, if you like, the realm of anoraks like me, who can get excited about this stuff at the drop of a hat, and actually really looking at what we could do to make a difference for our communities out of this. Yeah, diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Liz. I was keeping an eye on the chat on the side, and a few people asking the Barnett formula, and if you know, Crown Estate funds we were able to devolve, would that have an impact on any central funds?
Effectively, if it was devolved, we would have a control over the revenue and the assets that were located in Wales. Now, if you went back before the offshore wind projects, they probably wouldn't have been worth all that much. But as things stand, this all goes to the Treasury, and we will get, presumably, some back, but it's not in any shape or form Barnettized. This is in England and Wales, this is reserved. So it is not a Barnettized issue. But it looks to me that we are in a position now, because of offshore wind, where this is so valuable that we should be pushing for it.
Absolutely, and several questions. How if we did have it devolved, how would it be shared out? But then that's why we're here tonight, to look at options and influence the way that the money can be spent on projects, as you mentioned. Felly, diolch yn fawr iawn.
Could I just say with that question, because that's a really good question. Of course, this is the risk of devolving stuff. It goes from one government in Westminster to another government in Wales. Now, I'm always going to argue, although it won't be faultless, because it's politics as a human construct, but I would far rather this was managed in Cardiff for the whole of Westminster. Then, though, if we do the groundwork now and put in place what we would expect, there is a far better chance of this being decentralized, if you like, and to those communities that best benefit from it throughout Wales. If we do that now, rather than leave it as a blank slide.
No, that's very important to discuss how and when hopefully can be used. So felly diolch yn fawr iawn am egluro, a mae'r ffigurau'n enfawr yn dyn nhw, 900,000 o bunnau, yw bron biliwn o bunnau fyna sydd yn medru dod mewn i Gymru a'r economi. Felly mae'n bwysig, hynod o bwysig, bod e'n medru cael ei ddefnyddio'n effeithiol ar gyfer cynlluniau cymunedol bendant. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Felly, ewn ni draw nawr at Beth o ran yr hyn gyda blaidlafio ar y bosib, neu o ran profiadau mae ti Beth wedi bod yn ymwneud gyda yn y Senedd, os bydde ti medru egluro yr hyn wyt ti wedi bod yn gweithio ar. Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, Chris. A diolch yn fawr am y gwahoddiad i siarad heno, ac yn enwedig i Siarter Cartrefi am drefnu lansiad i'r ymgyrch holl bwysig yma. A mae'n grêt i weld siwr gymaint o bobl yma heno sydd yn adlewyrchu pa mor bwysig rydyn ni'n gweld yr ymgyrch yma. A fel Liz, rwy hefyd yn ddiolchgar bod ni'n gweithio yn drawsbleidiol ar hwn, a bydde fi'n hapus i wneud mwy o'r gwaith drawsbleidiol am materion Cymru. So mae hwnna'n grêt i ni bod yn gwneud hwn yn drawsbleidiol. O'n mynd i ddechrau gyda dyfyniad yn Saesneg, a mae fe'n mynd fel hwn. Creating lasting and shared prosperity for the nation. And that is the stated purpose of the Crown Estate, which I think we'll all agree is a commendable ambition that we all want for Cymru. The issue, however, is not the stated purpose, but the question of how we achieve this. And there's the rub for me, and I'm sure a lot of people on the call this evening. Now, fel pawb arall, pob Cymro, dwi wir yn caru Cymru. Prydferthwch, the green landscape, the abundant natural resources, a rich Welsh culture, a strong nation with a proud history of being at the forefront of change, striving to achieve a fairer, more equal, just, green and sustainable society for the people and communities of Cymru. And that is why I wholeheartedly support a lansiad o'r ymgyrch yma heno. Now, our history, as we know only too well, has been one where our plentiful resources, natural resources, have been ravaged and vast wealth extracted to be owned, managed and distributed by and for the few in the United Kingdom. So the profits go to the few while the many suffer poverty, hardship and inequality. Now, our valleys in the South Wales area were built on coal, and back at the turn of the 20th century, just under a third of the global coal exports came from our valleys. And the legacy of that for central London is abundance, extreme wealth, and extravagant buildings. Whereas the legacy for South Wales valleys is over 2,000 coal tips scattered across our hillsides, coupled with some of the highest levels of poverty and deprivation. And far too many of those tips are high risk, as you will know if you've been following the news coverage of the coal tips. And we've got another campaign going on that. So as our high street chains and banks leave our towns and the windows are boarded up, and we all sadly know communities like this in Cymru, I think it's natural to wonder where all the profits from powering the Industrial Revolution have gone. Why isn't Cymru the wealthiest country on earth? And although the heavy industries that defined Cynon Valley, where I live, have retreated, the extraction is continuing in different guises. So in Cwm Cynon, the wind farm atop our hills are owned by the Swedish state, while the sandstone that makes up the steep valley sides is extracted, the profits extracted by a German multinational, extracted like the young people who leave our areas to get on in life and instead strengthen other communities. That's the story of Wales past and present, but it does not have to be the story of our future. With abundant wind, rain, tidal power, Wales can and will, I feel passionately, power the future as it is done in the past. But imagine what we could do if the people of Wales had the power of owning our natural resources. As Liz has already outlined, and the celebrities, shall I call them, the Crown Estate has a portfolio worth over £16 billion. And that includes around 900 million assets in Wales. And in 2022-23, the Crown Estate made record net profits of over £440 million. Yet decisions about how our money is distributed and used are not made here in Cymru on behalf of the people of our country. Extraction and exploitation of Cymru's natural resources persist. Now, this has got to stop. We, the people of Cymru, must have the power to decide how the wealth created in our country is spent. The people living and working here in Cymru are best placed to know what is needed to benefit our communities. And this is fundamentally about democracy, devolution, prosperity, and sustainability. We have the potential, as Liz has outlined, to create a green economy, securing a sustainable future and where the wealth we generate is retained and invested in Cymru. And there is support for this. It is supported by both Plaid and Labour in the Senedd through the cooperation agreement. And, as has already been said, the Constitutional Commission of Wales made it clear in its report that the establishment of an expert panel group should be established to take forward the devolution of the Crown Estate. And the National Infrastructure Commission of Wales stated that by 2030 in its report, I think it was around October of last year, the Crown Estate functions in Wales should be completely devolved to a new body that has as its principal aim the reinvestment of funds in Wales for the long-term benefits of the people of Wales in the form of, yes, a sovereign wealth fund. Now, a sovereign wealth fund could be structured around the goals of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, with funds raised, invested to tackle poverty and inequality in Wales, and investing to build the green infrastructure and secure a sustainable country for future generations. And as part of this campaign process, I agree with what Liz was saying. It's how would the money best be distributed, and that's something you have to discuss, debate, and hopefully agree when we get the Crown Estate devolved to Wales. And the precedent has already been set in Scotland, where the Crown Estate is devolved, giving Scottish Government the ability to distribute millions of pounds to people and local communities in Scotland. So why shouldn't Cymru have parity with Scotland? Now, there's lots of enthusiasm for tonight's event and this important topic and campaign. Now, we've got to turn that into effective power that secures change for the better in Wales. So I want to finish with a call to action to build a movement for change to make this happen. We must build a network of people who support the demand to devolve the Crown Estate and, for me, establish a sovereign wealth fund. Politicians from across the political spectrum can and will continue to use the levers available to us to push for change, such as Liz's excellent Crown Estate Bill, which I was pleased and privileged to be able to support. There are things like Westminster Hall debates, backbench debates, Welsh Affairs Committee, and we can use written and oral questions. And members of the Senedd in Cymru can and will continue to use similar levers that are available to them. But having been in the bubble that I call Westminster for a few years now, I cannot stress enough the power that the people of Cymru have. If the people of Wales demand it with one voice, the politicians will and must follow. And actually, Westminster won't change the situation unless our voices as the people of Cymru are heard loud and clear in the corridors of power. So let's organise, let's build momentum. We need a campaign presence online. We need presence in local communities. We need to lobby. We need you to lobby MSs, MPs. We need support from the next Welsh First Minister to pressure UK government and to make sure this is a live issue in the next Westminster election. I truly believe that together we can achieve the Crown Estate's aim of creating lasting and shared prosperity for the nation. A fairer, more equal and greener Cymru that really does put people before profit for the benefit of everyone. The way to do it is to ensure the Wales's tremendous natural wealth is owned, managed and controlled by us, the people of Cymru. Now, I know the organisers of this fantastic event this evening have your details, and there will be future meetings and to establish next steps. So I'll pass back to the chair now, Chris, who I think is going to open up for contributions from the floor, which I know Liz and I are both very keen to hear and to learn from. So diolch yn fawr am nawr, ac diolch eto am y gwahoddiad I bod yma heno. Chris.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Beth. And I like the call for action. We will hold the 30th of January 2024 as the evening for that call and that cry for action. And it's now up to us, isn't it? Mae lan I ni nawr